Thank you for coming. We have some new people in the room, so thank you for joining us. And if you're not familiar, we are also live streaming on Facebook. So we have many, many people out there in Facebook land who are joining us at the same time, which is awesome because we can have a really cohesive conversation here in the room as well as out there about everything that's taking place on the planet. And that's why I'm here. We're with the Flower of Life Center for Human Evolution, and we are an organization that is focused on raising human consciousness, which is, I think, the solution, well, let's just say, the top tier solution to everything that's happening on the planet today. And so we have a lot of projects that we're focused on to support that movement on the planet. And we just got finished with our weekend in wizardry last weekend? Last weekend or the weekend before? Last weekend? Why I feel like time is eluding me. And maybe it was last weekend. Right here. And this is a movement for kids who are focused on these topics. These kids, and I shared this on my Facebook wall right after, are so amazing. I mean, if there's anything that gives me hope, we have a generation of children that are coming up that have the solutions to all of these problems. Not that we don't have them as well, but I think it's a really good sign that these kids are here because they're a testament to what we have ushered in. Because if the consciousness had not been high enough for them to arrive, and if they did not have the supportive mechanisms to allow them to grow, they wouldn't be here. So kudos to all of us and all of you for allowing that transition to take place. Now, these kids have no hesitation, not unlike us who sometimes doubt ourselves and have all these programs wired within us, generational patterns. That's also another awesome sign is they're just so, let's go at the problem. And they don't focus on it too long. If they're presented with a problem, they come together like a group. They start working the energy. Some of them are channels. They start using their channels and their guides. I had one of the participants come up to me and start doing some energy healing on my arms. And let me tell you, it was blowing me away. It was so incredibly strong. These kids are really amazing. So we have a youth movement that meets twice a month. Kayla Casey runs that. It's a remote group, and they gather to discuss. And we have mentors that come in and guide them. And this is all directed in the area of an alternative school and mentorship program that we're putting together that will be launching soon and gradually because it's so needed. Obviously now is the time, right, for that to happen. And my mission is to channel and to support everyone who's here with messages from a variety of guides and beings that are, I think, focused on supporting us so that we can get through this transition and get to the other side. And I think we're going to end up exactly where we're meant to end up. And I have a lot of insights to share. So we'll be here for 2 hours. And I always like to start off with a little, just kind of back up and summary of what the guides have been talking about lately and the themes. Because I've been doing a lot of session work. I've been very busy with that. And there are common themes. I swear everyone who comes to me is bringing up the same stuff. So it's nice to know that we're not alone. We're all going through some of the same things. And the guides have some amazing insights that I'll share about that. And then we'll do a trans-channeled experience. And I'm a trans channel for those of you who are new. Which means I step out of body and allow the guides to come in and they share with us whatever we need to hear. So we'll get a general message today. And then I'm open to take questions, or they are open to take questions. And if you're here in the room, just raise your hand. We have a mic we'll pass around so that everyone out there can hear the question. And if you're out there, you can type in the chat and Ethan will just stagger some of those questions in from those of you who are online. And we'll just flow with that for a while. So if there's anything that anyone in the room or out there wants to address before I start channeling, feel free, and we'll just make this interactive. I kind of want to pick up, though, where I left off last month. We talked a lot about resistance and the concept of resistance and why it's here and how it's extremely beneficial. So what resistance is it's the glue to shore up the difference between some old belief about who we are or where we've been, and some new desire about what we want to be or where we're going. So sometimes we look at resistance as a negative thing. How do I release the resistance? Well, the resistance is there to actually show you the areas that aren't working anymore so that you can reclaim the ones that are shown to you as the new potential. And a lot of times we get stuck in the resistance, or we're in that relationship where things feel hard and we're pointing fingers or we don't know what to do. And we stay in the relationship and it gets more and more and more uncomfortable. And that's just resistance communicating to you that your heart is showing a different way. Your soul wants you to go somewhere else or to do something in the relationship to make a change. And it will stay there as long as it needs to and get louder and louder and louder and more uncomfortable until we do shift. And we all know sometimes the universe takes care of that for us, where the universe will step in and say, the resistance has been here a little too long, so we're just gonna change the structure on you, and this is where crazy things happen. There's betrayals or we lose the job, all of a sudden. And we think we did something wrong because we shouldn't be suffering like this. And there's some kind of karmic thing that happened. But actually, I think it's a blessing that the universe comes in and supports us when we can't make those decisions. And so that's really the microcosmic view of what I think is taking place globally. And so I want to step further into this because this is where the guides have been going, is in resistant energy, what you really want to do is find stability, which, we can all just take a sigh and a laugh right now because there's nowhere stable to go anywhere on the planet unless you're, a woods meditator, for a couple of hours a day. Things are just really unstable. But I think this process is telling, right? So what the guides have been bringing in is the concept of a hologram. What's a hologram? Collectively, singularly, how do holograms fit together and how do they create structure? So on the Earth, our collective hologram is meant to contain a lot of diverse opportunities and experiences. We have free will. We're all unique. We all have different preferences, desires, talents. So an earthly and physical hologram is meant to have all of these opportunities to choose from. And that's how we thrive. So in a physical bodysuit on a physical planet, we thrive in diversity. Think about a non-physical collective, maybe like the Council of Light. Okay, I channel them. They're a 12th dimensional collective. They don't have physical bodies. They don't have this separate identity. They didn't choose that. They don't need it. So their collective hologram looks really different. They don't need all of that diversity because they all have the same intention. They're all flowing the same direction. They're working out the same things. They have the same assignment, the same focus. It doesn't make them any better or less than us. It's just a choice. It's a different type of reality. So I did a channeling this past week for my Inner Circle subscription, community. And the guides literally took us within the earth to show us what a collective hologram looks like. And it's this insane structure, with all these different potentials that we've created. So anytime we have a desire, we know this, anytime we have a desire, a thought, a new potential is born. So imagine the collective tide, and all these potentials. It's just this rich and, nourishing vault of potential stuff we can choose. And it all fits together. So kind of like a building has to have that, iron structure that supports it before the outer layer goes on. This is how the Earth hologram works. We all have a piece in that building structure where we're creating a personal hologram based on our unique experiences and desires that complements what we want to see take place in the outer world. So if we want everyone to live in peace and abundance, really our job is to create a collective hologram that is peaceful and abundant. If we want everyone to have a loving and supportive relationship, what we want to do is create loving, supportive relationships in our personal hologram, because that's the structure by which it flows to everyone else. Well, what the guides have said, and this is kind of the caveat and the interesting thing about the energy that we're in, is when a timeline split begins to take place in a hologram like ours, where there are two divides or different polarities, this is actually a good sign. And the reason is the amount of resistance between both of these collective realities is actually creating an environment where the tide is trying to move us in one direction. Which, that's a good thing to think about when we see we could go so many not so good directions. And it is still a potential for us to go backwards, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'll explain that in a moment. The guides have said polarity and timeline shifts, okay, although they're not meant to last for a long period of time, when they do, they're creating so much resistance that when that resistance releases, it's going to catapult us into a new experience. So there's an intelligence to the process that's going on a collective scale. And what we need to do is figure out how we tune into that and actually be a driving factor in moving it where we want to go. So take a deep breath on that, right? Because one of the things that's been coming up is, all these collective scenarios that are so challenging. We'll take one that's been coming up in my inner circle community is the child trafficking. It's been huge, right? There's a lot of pressure for us to get involved in that. How are we going to figure this out? We should all be on the same page. We all need to do the same thing. And I saw this bumper sticker the other day on a car. I was sitting in traffic. And I swear, I think the guides put it there because I don't even know if it exists. But I was staring at it like, wow, this is interesting. And the bumper sticker said, unity over diversity. And I had to pause on that and really think about it. Unity over diversity. And the immediate thought that came up was, well, the guides would never say that. They would say unity relies upon diversity. But in my personal world, I had to deconstruct that and go into some of the, channeled messages to really work it out. And the conclusion that I've come to is that unless we all take the path of the unique service that we're here to offer, there's no way that we're going to make change in these really big areas. So let's say someone's out there leading a mission to uncover this issue with child trafficking and resolve it. And there's a lot of physical type of steps that, come up for us to take. That's amazing. And there are some people who are probably meant to do that. But if we all take the same physical steps and we all channel energy in the same direction, what's going to happen to that structure? Right? Some instability. Because if we're all strengthening, one of the supports on one side, the other side's going to probably fall down. And this whole experience, this child trafficking experience, is a structure that we have to dismantle. So if we can get at the problem, we can rescue the children, we can do all these physical things, but if the structure still exists that creates the problem, then we haven't resolved anything. So we look at a lot of the sources on the planet of these issues, and we know we have a consciousness here that exists that we're either feeding with our energy or we are allowing ourselves to change by taking our energy elsewhere. Now, this may sound selfish, and that's a lot of what I hear going on in the community. If you're not doing this to affect change in this one area, then you're not in unity consciousness. And that is a fear-based statement. And the one thing that I know for sure that my guides have reiterated time and time again is that if we are going to create anything, if we're going to make physical action and channel our energy into anything, if it's done from a place of fear, we're probably going to navigate off the path, because there is a path and there is a divine plan. And we're here to create change in so many unique ways that we build that structure back up again to something new. So instability and shoring that up on a personal level is something I want to talk about in terms of just, a couple examples, and I've seen some examples of this lately that I think are so perfect to creating the new earth and really why we're here right now. And I saw a post the other day on Facebook. Someone who is a friend of mine posted something, and forgive me because I don't know the state that they were in, but it was all about children and schooling. So we know we have a structure that's very unstable. School's on, it's off. We're waiting for the CDC to give us the guideline. Oh, the CDC doesn't have the guideline. Oh, wait, the stats have changed. The administrator said this. The administrator didn't say that. This is a tug of war in the Akashic realm that's playing out. That is the loop of the old grid and goes nowhere. So if you're hanging on and you're waiting to stabilize your personal situation based on what's happening out there, you're probably going to be unstable for a pretty long time. And I hate to say it, I don't want to be the one who's delivering bad news. I actually don't think it's bad news. I think this is the resistance that's pushing the new earth into being. So the Facebook post was sharing how amazing it was that there was this parent community online where all of these thousands of parents were posting their kids' ages and geographic location, and they were creating these homeschool pods where they were soliciting teachers to come in and work with kids in these small homeschool groups. Now that is the perfect example of how you stabilize in an unstable vibration. That's what we're all being called to do. And I guarantee these pods that are being created aren't going to go away anytime soon, just like all the other stuff that's being put into place. But that's really where the guides have been showing us. We have to take the steps in our life to create the things, the stability for our families, for ourselves, that are moving us in the direction of where we want to go. So another example of this in our personal lives has to do with uprooting and moving. And I can't tell you how many client sessions I've done in the last several months where someone gets on and says, almost everybody has gotten on and said, I need to move, where do I go? There's this kind of feeling of jumping ship right now with everything in our life because it doesn't feel safe. Things don't feel safe. We want to stabilize really quickly. So the message I've been getting about that has a lot to do with what the guides have been talking about in terms of this grand reorganization right now, where there are magnets drawing magnets and collective families, right? Drawing collective families. And that's going to be playing out for quite some time. So the common theme is, if you feel like you need to jump ship and move, that's okay. But allow yourself to be a little mobile. Look at it as exciting. Maybe you're going to take off and explore. And you're going to try out a new area, but you're going to leave yourself open to move if that area doesn't work out. Because I see that over the next couple of years where all of the instabilities in the outer world that we're trying to shore up really quickly are going to probably change again, right? Environments are going to change. People are going to move. So it's the small and deliberate steps that we take that are the greatest strengths to our vibration. It isn't that jump off the cliff, strip it all away. Although, caveat to that, some of us are doing that just because we're meant to. I think in general, though, we need to take it day by day. And we need to look at what's unstable today that I can actually make a small step towards that is going to support me, but also support the new earth. And so I can tell you how that's showing up for me, because I've also felt that jump ship kind of vibration, like I got to get the heck out of Dodge. So I'm constantly asking my guides, do I need to get out of here? No, I need to stay. And then I check the next day. Do I need to go? No, you need to stay. Damn it. Is there a safer place? Should I go? No. So I'm looking at this as an opportunity to create an environment where I am that mirrors what I want for myself and everyone else. I've been looking at sustainability, getting a little more off grid. I want that for everybody. I don't want us to be tied to a enslavement system. Looking at solar and, things like this. These are all little things that I want to bring into my home environment that make me feel more empowered, that I think carries my vibration in the direction of that new structure that we're trying to build. Service is huge. And I think that right now we find ourselves in this window of opportunity where time is allowing us we have the space, let's just say, to create something new. And I think that's so incredibly important because where we're moving in the fifth dimension is going to require a different kind of healing structure, a different kind of community structure, education, all of that stuff. We all play a role in that. So even if you take small steps each day towards what you're here to create or what you want to do, you're making a huge vibrational impact. And we think that doesn't affect all of that stuff out there, the child trafficking and the, racism and all of this stuff. It has to, because that stuff exists because there's instabilities in the grid. There are hierarchies there. There's better than and worse than. There's conditions that have been put in the way. And we have to start here so that we don't have those conditions, instabilities, and hierarchies in ourselves, so that we can play the role that we're meant to play on the planet that supports the entire thing. And that's really what we've been doing. It's why this is happening, right? How many of us have been working so hard on all of that stuff? The past patterns, the archetypal lineages, the body, all this stuff, spiritual stuff. This would not be happening today. The structure would not have even become unstable if we weren't attempting to move to something we've already created in non-physical. And I think that's the most empowering, or I'll say inspiring part of this whole thing for me in editing the manuscript of my first book, which I should have mentioned is maybe a week away. The energetic aspects of this, when you really dig into them, are showing us that we created this situation. It's a time of embodiment. It's a time of creativity. Sometimes we have shifted vibrationally, and all of a sudden we see our world differently. We have to make some tough decisions now to go where we are meant to find comfort, where the past no longer resonates and the future awaits. And I think that's the walk that we're all in right now, is to take those deliberate and physical steps and anchor in that new reality. Not easy, right? Absolutely not easy. The guides have been alluding to working outside of time a lot. And I noticed this in my own life, and I want to bring it in because I think it does apply to a lot of what these restrictions are allowing us to do. In my own life and, in no egoic or judgment way, I find that I'm living more in the fifth dimension every single day. And something I didn't realize is I was literally operating outside of time. I got rid of the alarm clock and I took my phone to the other side of the bed. I stayed in tension to get up and let my higher self guide me wherever I need to go. Not that I don't have a schedule, I certainly do. But I realized the other day that my body clock is just waking up with the sun, preparing itself for whatever is ready to start. I have more space to actually care for myself and do things that are creative. And this is what I think we're moving into right now with all of this time and space that we have perhaps on our hands. I know that financial abundance is a big concern with everyone right now, and especially what we might be facing on the planet. But it works kind of similarly to time. Where we're going, we manifest differently. The imprint around money is changing. It no longer has that hierarchical or reptilian influence, that service to self kind of energy wrapped around it. It's a free and sovereign type of expression that we're not used to. So the more free and sovereign we become with time and creativity and what's flowing in our environment and working, the more we're naturally going to manifest this new currency or whatever's coming to replace what's going away right now. As we can get all wrapped up inside and try to stabilize that in an old grid model as well, which carries us away from stuff that's ready to source and pull in. So I want to add the topic of source. I really feel like this is a time where we are reconnecting to source, because the guides have shown me a lot in session that we've created this false matrix around us to source. Anytime we put a condition in the way, we have to work a certain number of hours in order to receive a certain amount of money. We have to have a degree in order to get the job. We have to look a certain way in the world in order to be successful. These have created these paths in our energy field to source that are operating slower and more restrictive than what we are designed to do. So the question right now, the big question is, what is your source? At a time when the outer world is showing us multiple truths and false energies, where we believe something one day and then it changes the next day, where we're constantly shocked by the next thing that's coming down the pipeline. We're being called within to find that connection to source again, because it was never out there. Our source, our truth, none of it was ever out there. And that's what we're unwinding from and breaking free of right now, and finding that connection back to source. And what I believe is it operates easier and better than what we're used to in the third dimension. Any questions? Breathing for a minute. Anything online?
Please discuss where education is heading. How do we support and educate children in these transitional times?
Well, what I love about this question is it plays off what I just said, which is we're reconnecting to source energy. And the kids come in, they're such pure channels of source. And I think the old structure, the old educational model isn't set up that way. It's feeding them truths that aren't really necessarily their truth. And they see right through this. So we have a conscious parent group that we've met with on and off. And one of the things that I've learned from the parents is, these kids don't want to go to school because they come home and say, Mom, they're teaching me stuff that's not true. So here we are in the midst of a transition where the old school system is becoming so restrictive, I think, because the kids really can't fit there any longer. Now, where I think we're ultimately going, and this is a little alternative, but we do have a lot of parents who are doing it, is unschooling. The whole unschooling model is based upon that free flow that I was just talking about with time and creativity. And a lot of parents who are doing this are seeing that their kids are actually driving their own education, where there's something innate within them that they're coming to do, that they're so interested in, that they're carving out their own path. And that's, I think, where we're meant to end up, because when we think about hybrid children coming to the planet, crystal kids, we can't really teach them. They're actually here to teach us. So even the whole teaching model is going out the door, where I see more of a facilitator or mentorship type of arrangement. And that's what we've been, co-creating with our team to put out there, especially, for example, we had a child in our program this past weekend who channels Isis brilliantly, amazingly, like I'm in awe. She doesn't need the education system to help her with that. She probably needs a mentor who has something to share with her to help her along the way. And what her parent was sharing is that she was really gravitating towards medical, wanting to understand medical and maybe be a doctor. Well, what I've come to know in my own channeling path is sometimes to channel information, we have to have a library. There's information that has to be in our consciousness because the concepts that are going to come in are things that are foreign to us. And I sensed that about her, that maybe she does need to take a little alternative healing path for a while and have a mentor or coach there that helps her understand that path. And, maybe there's a channeling mentor, although, my gosh, she doesn't even need a channeling mentor, right? So her needs may evolve, change, and grow based on what she's receiving and how she wants to put that out there. And a very rigid structure of the past, isn't going to fit for someone like her. It just isn't going to work. So I think that's what we're moving towards gradually. And I think it's necessary, in all areas. We can even look at this in corporate. One of the things that, one of the messages that my guides brought in a lot last year was the corporate entity or corporate structure was going to begin dismantling. Now, we see it right now on the planet as big business is kind of thriving and taking the lead and little business is falling apart. But I think that's the build, the resistance that's, coming into play where a lot of us are tuning in and seeing that now. And small businesses that haven't been able to survive are going to come up with creative ways to put themselves back on the planet and actually serve humanity. So I see us moving to communities where small business is more the norm, where everyone's bringing something to the community that's necessary and it's not coming from, that one big corporate source. You have a question?
Me?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I saw you raise your hand.
Oh, I was thinking a little bit ahead. You're reading my mind ahead.
Yeah, maybe we're tuning into the energy. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is, a part of this. And, my gosh, let's look at government. And I listen, I have deep appreciation for all of you, people out there fighting the good fight. But we've seen how this works out. We're fighting the good fight with a structure that is not stable. If it was a stable structure and we came in and we suggested change, and as a group came together and demanded change, we'd probably see change happen. I don't think that this old government structure can come with us into the new earth because it is based on a reptilian grid that is too unstable, is focused on service to self of the few and not best intention for all. So I hate to say it. It's not not trying to put everyone out there in fear, but we see it, don't we? We see it. It's not working. It's holding us back. And if we want to be stable and we try to participate with an unstable collective energy, it's just going to throw our entire life, our families out of balance. And so a lot of us are playing this waiting game, and in some areas we have to. We don't have any choice but to play the waiting game. But in that waiting game, there are multiple potentials, and that's really what I want to circle back to, is the grid structure within Earth giving us multiple potentials. And we can take those and we can make them whatever we want in our personal life right now. And as we do, we are affecting change in all of the areas collectively that we want to see changed. That's the dynamic. You have a question?
How can two working parents homeschool? What alternatives do you see for them, and how do you find these mentors?
Well, I think that in, different situations, what I see playing out is there's co-cooperative, energies coming together, communities where there are parents who do stay at home or work at home, who are volunteering to pick up the slack and organize with those who don't have that opportunity. I even saw where there were pods or these small collective groups coming together, bringing parents in who couldn't afford to pay for it and offering to pay the teacher's salary for them. I mean, this is huge. This is like an underground movement that's going on that I think is going to take over very soon. So it's hard to say your personal situation and your geographic region, what you can do at this time. But I'd say look at those parenting groups out there on Facebook, on wherever they are, here all over the place, and find yourself some camaraderie or someone in the area who's facing the same challenges that you are with the same age children. I think the teacher role on this planet right now is gold. Oh my gosh, if you're a teacher, it looks pretty grim, but on the surface, but I think you are going to be in high demand in many respects. The Flower of Life mentorship program is still in the works, and we are planning to launch that very soon. So stay tuned here, and we'll definitely have insights on that. And we are not really looking at the conventional teaching model in terms of math and science and all of that stuff. Our mentorship program is evolving around ancient archaeology, numerology, metaphysics, energy healing, alternative healing, all of these types of topics, because this is where we think the new Earth is meant to spring up. And I honestly think that embedded within that are the day-to-day and earthly tasks that we need to understand to carve out a life for ourselves. Critical thinking is something that we've always put into our planning program for children, because critical thinking is the basis for how we operate here on the planet and carve out a personal path of truth. We've talked a lot about things like gardening. There's math and science and all of that in planting a home garden, and that is a new Earth activity. So this is the direction I think we're going, and that will show up inevitably. It's showing up already. It's just going to gain steam. That's where resistance is pushing us. In that one area, that's where resistance is pushing us. So imagine in all of these microcosmic areas where resistance is pushing us, this creativity that the guides have talked about, that was the theme for these years, which seems so opposite of what we feel, really, I think, is the crux of how the new Earth shows up. All right, we have 5 more minutes, and then I'll start to channel. Final questions, thoughts, insights in the room? Yeah. All right.
Strange question.
Yeah, that's
But
okay. Strange
I'm
is
an
good.
observer of humanity. I don't mean this to sound offensive to anyone or anything, but it kind of came up. I have this one little neighbor lady, cute gal. I think she's about 45, which from my point of view seems kind of young or something. And she was telling me, oh, I'm going to get surgery soon. And I was like, oh no, what's wrong? And she says, oh, well, I'm going to get my breasts redone. And I went, oh, aren't you kind of like afraid or something? She's like, oh, no, blah, blah, blah. And it just made me think, just my concern for her, and to each his own. And I mean, and you were talking about how, like, in our culture and different ways that we present ourselves. And I mean, I participate. I like to color my hair. I like to wear makeup. I have pierced ears. And a lot of even the ancients were always, putting stuff on their faces. It's like sometimes I think we women are trying to be like male birds or something. But what my question is, and it just made me think of it, like cutting into your body for and we all, it's nice to look good or something when you're going out. But with so much of our bodies as temples, we're a physical shell for so much more.
Yeah.
What are the non-physical friends? Do they ever observe that and think that we're kind of nuts, like some of the stuff that we do to our bodies? Just curious.
Yeah. They don't usually put it that way. They're far more, they're far sweeter and more loving than that. But I want to answer that question, but I want to bring up a point first that you really remind me of that I think is so important, is consequences. Because your mind went straight to the consequences, like, oh my gosh, she's going to a hospital, having selective surgery, and all things that can go wrong. But I bet they won't go wrong for her, because they're not even in the top of her mind, right? And this is another theme that the guides have been bringing in. So we think we can't stabilize ourselves in an unstable energy because there's all these consequences we have to face. And if we go out and do this or that, we're going to, end up in jail. And this is such a false idea. because consequences don't come from the outer world. We are all creating our personal hologram to our desires, thoughts, emotions, beliefs, truths. So if you're replaying some of that in your mind right now and it's holding you back from doing what you want to do, you're probably going to run into the hologram of another that has the potential for that outcome to take place. And this is how geographic regions on the planet actually experience more restriction and war. You know, there is a karmic piece to that too, where we magnetize people around us with similar influences and themes and patterns. But there is a belief component of that, right? Where we're building a collective hologram in our homes, in relationship, in our communities, where consequences happen, but we don't necessarily have to run into them. But that being said, yeah, huge interruption of your energy circuits when you do that. And that, yeah, absolutely. Like the Arcturians are just screaming on that one, because those channels and meridians of energy, they are our communication line, you know, and they support and help us not only to be healthy, but to connect etherically. You know, it's not, it doesn't just, you know, end at our skin. It goes through our aura and into universe, into earth. So absolutely all of that stuff gets disturbed when we do that. You know, that being said, also, I think there are a lot of solutions these days, because many of us have had to have, you know, surgeries. And one of the cool ones that I've been working with is PEMF. You guys are probably familiar with that, you know, pulse electromagnetic frequencies. And there's actually scar settings on there where you can send messages into the body to help the tissues to regenerate and, you know, connections to be made. So even though that's happening, I do think there are some amazing solutions on the planet, if you have had surgeries and things, to make the reconnection again and help your body come back into that organic state where it's communicating properly. I think it, you know, takes some effort, and you have to carve out the personal path to the practice or the technology or the person that has the ability to do that. But it's all over the place. Yeah. So yeah, I think they would kind of not laugh at it, but say, no, electively, don't do that. Right. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll start channeling. We do pass a basket, so don't feel like you have to offer anything. But if you can, we use it for our programs to pay for the venue and any overage, you know, to our Conscious Seeds program and expo. So for those of you who haven't experienced my channeling before, we're just going to get a download first from the guides, and I don't know who that's going to be today. We'll just let them provide whatever we need to hear. And then we take questions. So just raise your hand. We'll pass the mic, wait for the mic so everyone can hear, and feel free to post questions in the chat. And this is a vibrational experience, not a mental one. So if your brain gets overwhelmed, just sit and meditate and receive, and you'll get everything that you need today from the transmission. All right. And we'll always shift in and out and tell you who's speaking as we bring in different guides and beings. All right, and we are going to work with the Council of Light today, and I welcome them. We are the Council of Light. We are a collective of multidimensional beings that exist in a 12th dimensional reality, and we come together to co-create and focus upon the universal grid system and how it channels information between various locations, which is an Akashic activity and ultimately supportive of the entire universe as a whole. And we want to spend some time today speaking about Akashic activity and how this is playing out on your planet, especially at a time in which the communication from the outer world is causing so much disturbance and confusion within humans. We look at your grid system quite differently than many of you would perceive. And we'll start by saying that we are not here to relay the outcome of what is happening on your planet today, much to the disappointment and dismay of many of you. And this is not because we know the answers and there is something we are holding back and not sharing. We look at all energy as coexisting together and supporting anything that is needed to change in the direction of harmony and truth. But sometimes there are catalysts in the way of that truth and harmony evolving in the direction of desire. And as we look at the grids, what we are observing is any dysfunction or disconnection where communication systems aren't working properly. The Akashic Records are a field of vibratory information that becomes organized and structured based on dimension and speed of vibration. The whole of the Akashic Records could not be known by you in any one moment or even in any one linear lifetime, because this would be far too much information for a cellular organism that is physical to hold. So in each moment, what is happening is you are drawing information from the Akashic field that is best suited to serve you. This is an activity of source. And so it's important for us to speak about the relationship of source to the Akashic Records. They are a complementary energy and work very well together in harmony. Source energy is present within any structure, within Earth, within you, within the entire human collective, and all other beings that are present in this universe. Source energy is a container, and it draws for you relevant information from the Akashic field to support activity, experience, physical creation. And as it surges through you, it becomes thought form and ideas. It becomes connected vitally to your life force energy to leave some imprint upon the earth. And what the grids do is they take shape based on how you source from the Akashic field and how you offer that energy back. So right now, where you sit or where you stand, you are a point in the grid system of humanity, whereby the earth and all of its inhabitants are supported. So if there are any catalysts or blocks for that energy to surge, the first logical place to look is within the self. Because if you are this relevant in the whole of the earth, then you hold the potential as a clear channel to offer something that is supportive of the earth's movement forward. So what we see when we look at your grids is not an ever-present and flowing constructive energy, so much as a million different grid points lighting up and showing a geometric pattern. And what we notice sometimes is the equilibrium of the pattern is off. Some of you are very adept healers and you are able to recognize sacred geometries or languages of light. And there may be a subtle area that calls your attention where a part of the geometry is broken or there isn't symmetry in all areas. This is a communication technology. What it shows us is there is something in the way between the pure connection of source and where the grid is forming. So what we see taking place within the earth is the outer communication is actually showing you the instability of the inner. Where you are being thrown into scenarios of ever-present changing realities, there is an opportunity to find stability such that a path is carved out to truth. What the Akashic realm conspires to do is share whatever is necessary for the next leg of the journey. But sometimes there's a tug of war that takes place in the Akashic realm. As a magnet, You are drawing whatever is necessary for your next steps. But as a whole, as a collective, you're sending a signal to also show a collective communication from the Akashic field. And this is where we see so many roadblocks to humans awakening, is that they are so reliant upon the relevance of outer information that they neglect to see it has any connection to their inward ability to discern and understand. Because what consciousness conspires to do, as you are all sitting within a vehicle of consciousness, is to look at whatever is arising and to open the perspective of it to decide. We'll make this earthly relevant to you. Where perhaps a news report is showing you some statistic or new uprising of difficulty, what higher consciousness is designed to offer are a series of avenues to positively question whatever that one statistic or story is sharing. Because what we notice is there's such a limited Akashic relevance to what you're receiving in the outer world. It's actually coming from a distortion, a restrictive matrix that's feeding you something that's challenging your inner truth. But if it's taken as valid without any questioning by you, you're strengthening that as well. So what's playing out on the earth right now is an opportunity for all humans to step outside of the realm of this false matrix and choose to become the inner guide of their own reality, to allow consciousness to question everything that it is shown and choose through intuitive insight, through the body, through the harmony of spirit, the path that is best believed by the soul and utilized as a tool by the higher self to anchor in a personal experience. Now, as a collective that is very focused as one, we lead quite a different experience than you do. We have immediate connection to the Akashic realm and can source and hold libraries of dimensional information at once. This is because there is nothing standing in the way of our ability to understand and utilize it. The one thing that we see most standing in the way of this for humans is judgment. The inner or outer judgment that you are holding as a race is the proponent of the broken grid or the inequality in the sacred geometric design. We acknowledge that if you were, as a human race, to drop judgment collectively in one moment, the entire new earth would spring up before your eyes with little effort. We know this is a very grand statement to make. But we actually recognize and acknowledge how important it is to look within such that the outer world changes. This is why we have arrived to operate consecutively together as one in harmony, because there can be nothing that separates us as a soul. And this is what we desire for you. Not in the good or the bad and the realities that are harmful versus safe. We know that it is still necessary on the planet for you to carve out a personal preference and to navigate geographically and otherwise to the most appropriate reality that you feel comfortable and safe. But it is the very subtle judgment you place upon others and upon the self that is causing this Akashic anomaly to strengthen. We'll leave you with this thought, though. Anytime these anomalies are present, the only reason they are is they are a contributing factor to healing. What you notice as something that needs to change provides the opportunity to do so. And we see there are so many potentials for you to choose in the non-physical that navigate to the path of safety and abundance. We desire those for you in all areas of your life, and we're very pleased to support in any way possible in order to achieve them. And we're very pleased to take questions.
So on Earth, how many dimensions do we have access to as human beings?
Yes. We're Pleiadians, and we look at dimensional reality as the construct of your DNA. There are 12 strands of DNA that exist within the human body, and these run parallel to 12 dimensions of universal reality. Now, we do see that universe itself continues to expand, and what that means is there are dimensions beyond the 12th that are forming already, specifically a 13th dimension that is becoming quite stable in this galactic universe. So your DNA strands are a harmonic access point to downloading dimensional reality. That being said, as a human that is physically focused, many of you have activated 12 strands of DNA, both carbon and crystal at times. But it is not quite possible for you to hold a 12th dimensional reality on Earth just yet. The way that this shows up is as a psychic tool or a healing potential, whereby you are using it through a container to support others. And this is why many of you are leading alternative lives, where there is a part of your energy that wants to go the direction of a more multi-dimensional and metaphysical path, while there is a sustaining part of you that stays grounded in the third dimension. But this too is beginning to change. We actually acknowledge as well that there are multiple universes and a multiverse container through which dimensional realities coincide. That is an Oversoul activity that is also a part of your technology that is beginning to come online as well. Our best advice to you in order to access new dimensions is to continue to consider that it is not just the non-physical focus of crystallizing DNA and activating yourself with breath, but also taking the physical complementary steps to detoxify and put into action the new knowledge that you've acquired. Because there are many who have crystallized DNA strands, but they have yet to integrate with the carbon-based double. This is where universal knowledge that exists off-planet and an earthly experience begin to coincide and make sense. And this is where opportunities show up in your environment to put it into action. So we know that as humanity continues to evolve, the access to higher dimensions will evolve as well. We actually see you stepping into a fifth dimensional potential collectively, which is a multidimensional container and pathway beyond where you've been restricted in the third. It's an exciting time, we believe, where the Akashic relevance that was just spoken of by the council is more readily available to you and will show up in very creative lights.
Okay, from my understanding, fifth dimension, a lot of information that I got from it in the fifth dimension, you could have access to yourself in multi dimensions. And can you extract in the fifth dimension from all those different versions of yourself?
Yes, absolutely you can. Let's look at the fifth dimension separately first and then talk about the self and how that is playing out in terms of retrieving information from other dimensions. The reason we look at the fifth dimension as a very significant platform to launch into multidimensionality is because it operates differently through universal law than what you are used to on the planet previously. Fifth dimensional potential considers that all energy fields are working in concert and that an open source is present. Open source holds no restriction of the hierarchies that you are used to. And it focuses less on physical and more on masculine and feminine imbalance, which we believe you're already stepping into. Now, you've always had a built-in mechanism or component of your technology to draw parts of you from other dimensions. The problem has been that it's been a very unstable energy and physical to be able to take that information and apply it somewhere. So many of you have had the Akashic draw from other timelines and ulterior dimensions, but it hasn't fully integrated similar to the DNA strands because there's no relevance to it that exists currently. So what the fifth dimension opens up for you is a platform to now take this information and make use of it. We look at the Oversoul as being a very critical container to this, and we want to explain what the Oversoul is and how it works with the DNA and in concert with universal energies. The Oversoul is your universally focused vision. The higher self, for example, sees all of your earthly timelines. It knows how to make sense of those and organize them, and it knows the common threads that are drawn between karmic experiences to this one. What it's always attempting to do is resolve those and balance them in a way that all lifetimes on Earth are affected. And this is a hard concept for humans to understand because they believe that karma only happens in the linear place that they stand and can only be resolved there. But what begins to happen in the higher self container when it is active and present is that anything that's cleared or changed in the now makes its imprint and impact on timelines elsewhere that are running consecutively, that have no ending and continue to go on. Now, the Oversoul does the same thing, but it is focused on your cosmic lifetimes. Lifetimes you've lived off Earth, perhaps in Pleiades or Arcturus or a myriad of other different planets and stars. What the Oversoul requires is the basis of a connection between the soul and higher self. And that's the first part that we acknowledge is so important. Many of you have already achieved this, and it's not something to be measured or something that you should judge based on its relevance to yourself versus another. We think the Earth has been supporting this, and it's already been a part of your experience in the third dimensional grid to redraw karmic energies and replay them over and over again. You are stepping out of that right now, and that's a positive sign. The Oversoul actually works with your DNA strands. So to have a certain number of DNA strands crystallized is like a gateway or an access point to multidimensional lifetimes. What happens often is we see these fragments come in from past karmic experiences, and these can be very cosmic in nature as well. And they throw humans for a loop in physical because they play out a bit differently here than they have in these very cosmic lifetimes. One example to this that we see going on currently with many of you is past lifetimes in Atlantis, where there is a parallel to the timeline split that is happening right now, and many of you can feel that and have tuned into it. Of course, it happened quite differently, but it is happening nonetheless. So what the Oversoul is doing is it's drawing beneficial fragments, parts of you that have assignments elsewhere that match your potential here, and attempting to integrate them, bringing in information that's suitable to it and helping to ascend your gifts and abilities into a higher state. This is beneficial of time travel. It's also beneficial of telepathic communication. So yes, we agree that you're stepping through a threshold where it is effortless to bring this technology online because the human has reached a specific point that's supporting it. Many of you are feeling into it, but know that regardless of what you're viewing or acknowledging in the outer world, you have the ability to perceive it in a way that's beneficial. So even if parts of you are coming in that are disturbed or from cosmic wars, they are only a match or a draw to your vibration. Very similar to what we always say about shifting vibration and perception changing. All of this has a cohesiveness and operates together as one.
So recently I've been having a lot of experiences that are shifting my perspective on a lot of things. One of which would be that of manifestation. And I've come to realize that in being so focused in a specific outcome, I become sort of entrapped in the cycle of suffering. When I've realized that when we let go of expected outcomes, we let go of the resistance to what is. How can we come into a place of just being and surrender to the universe?
Yeah, so we are Archangel Gabriel, and we enjoy that you've brought this question forward because we think it lends itself very well to what's happening collectively on the planet. It is not just the non-physical focus that is so important. So we want to start with an analogy of how we see your manifestation skills working in the third dimension and how they might be shifting as you move into the fifth. In the third dimension, it was important to have a visionary technique. And this is why many of you have attracted these teachings, because the feeling of tapping into some alternative reality and holding on to that feeling brought you into the vibratory space where a potential was matched. But this wasn't the end-all be-all of the process. What source energy is attempting to rectify is the balance between your desires and what you planned on before coming. Because what you put into motion and what you coded within your divine plan before coming to the earth has significant relevance here. The interesting part of this is it's not as specific as meeting the exact person that you believe is best for you. It holds a magnet to very supportive relationships and experiences that will ascend you, as well as ones that will support your sense of service and activate your gifts and abilities. But you have a preference as to how that relationship shows up. Where the resistance comes in and the suffering is that often your visions are tainted by third dimensional societal programs, where you have been entrained in some belief that there's a certain partner you must have in order to be happy, or that happiness even comes from a partner. We even see where your ability to manifest has been wrapped around an old structure of physical work, whereby there are some desires to show up on the planet, even in a more egoic sense or self-serving manifestation than what your divine plan actually holds. So when you're chronically noticing the difference between the vision that you have to manifest and what's actually arriving on the earth, you do find yourself in a state of stagnancy because you're constantly measuring and recounting what you desire and where you are. But it is the acknowledgement of where you are that is a critical component in the design. And this is why we always bring in presence, and many of you are familiar with practices of gratitude. In the third dimension, practices of gratitude were taught because they brought you into the present moment to acknowledge all of the wellspring of manifestation that's already been laid at your feet, so that that distance wasn't constantly being calculated. Now let's take you into the fifth dimension, and then we'll give you some very personal recommendations about how you can find yourself tuned to the best manifestation potentials. Your technology has shifted so much in the last several linear years that there is very little space between your non-physical or light body and your physical body. And because of this, manifestation happens quicker. You are finding yourself very active manifestors, are you not? Where a thought springs up and all of a sudden that thought or desire is downloaded or experienced in some way. Now, it may not be the way in which you intended, but nonetheless, it's certainly showing up. And we credit this to the speed of vibration that you're holding. In the fifth dimension, a faster speed of vibration allows your technology to work more cohesively. So it's less effort that is required than in the third dimension. The interesting thing to acknowledge about this is your divine plan is always orchestrating the best outcomes for you. But those outcomes are often unknown. So what Source is always looking for is the direction that you're heading in physical, to shore up the difference between what is known and what is unknown, so that you have the free will to fine tune what's in the divine plan based on what source sees you acting to. And that's why we always encourage in physical to take small and deliberate steps towards, or to play out the scenario of, or spend a small amount of time each day creating something that is pleasing to you, because it's the pleasure of that that shows source how you want the divine plan to actually be co-created. So the relaxation comes in looking back at your life and seeing where you stand today in response to where you are headed. That even though there have been challenging times, and even though you haven't manifested everything that you've desired, you have received so much as a human soul. And that acknowledgement isn't necessarily a daily practice of gratitude so much as it is a state of being. In the fifth dimension, this state of being is far easier than what many of you have learned, because it takes less physical effort, which is a masculine energy that you have also been entrained in, and more of a state of flow whereby you're trusting the source that is within you to look at what you have planned and to orchestrate it to where you are headed. It is almost as if source is providing the next step of the journey that is unseen, that you so desire to know that you're putting resistance in the way of it even providing it. And so to make it quite simple, allow yourself the space to acknowledge this present moment and everything that it contains. And in each day, strive to create something or to move energy towards something that is your desire. And as you do this, you'll find that source is providing on a daily basis and in an easier acknowledged flow what it is you require.
I've been learning a lot about like India and the Himalayas and yoga. And I know a lot of people in the West believe that yoga is simply like an exercise or a physical practice, but there's a whole ancient meaning and significance to yoga. And, you know, these yogis, through this practice of guru to disciple, have been embodying these amazing spiritual capabilities. And some of them get absorbed in meditation for hundreds of years, and they're doing all these miraculous things. So could you like elaborate on what really is yoga and how that like relates or ties into us and what we're doing here, and how we can kind of tap into that same practice and capability?
Yes, we are the Lemurian collective, and it's important for us to step forward now because many of the ancient yogic practice has stemmed from processes that we have used ourselves in our own civilization. And the yogic practice is a blending of breath with physical to allow the two fields that are so separate and seen on your planet as deliberately needing attention to work effortlessly together as one. It is the yogic practice to allow the breath to alchemize and transform the physical body beyond a linear range. And this is why many of the ancient yogis could live beyond the linear years that you are now used to, because the rebirthing of the body would take place time and time again. There are multiple answers to your question as to why this happens. And so we want to bring some of the most beneficial ones forward so that you have an understanding of what takes place within. But this has much to do with the original human structure. And this is not to disappoint you in any way, shape, or form, but where you stand today is a different physical structure and non-physical technology than what you were seated in. Very similar to the plant collectives on your earth that have been hybridized away from purity. Many of you understand also that you have been genetically modified. The original yogic practices were tuned to the inner sound of Gaia. Now, Gaia herself holds the ability to chronically reorganize and expand at will. Earth has a number of years that can be applied, but continues to thrive and expand dependent upon the diverse energies within her. So when we look at the original sound within the core of Gaia, what we're hearing and we're interpreting is the sound of the universe, because this is what she was born in. And you are all born of this sound as well. Any methodical yogic practice is allowing that harmonic to be raised again. It connects you beyond the self to a field or a presence that cannot be contained in physical, cannot be contained within the body. And this is how you were designed. You were designed for the prana of Earth and the universe to constantly nourish and support you as a cellular being. There are several insights we want to mention about this process. And we'll first start with what we call the central meridian or vagal channel. The vagal channel or central meridian runs through the center of your body, and it is a very extra sensitive acoustic tool. What it does is it sends energy and communication through the body, through the metallic grids that are present within Earth and connect to you, so that there's a recycling of energy, meaning there's a flow, a constant bringing in and a recycling of and sending out what is not needed. This is the ultimate detoxification that you can interact with. When the body is in the midst of a pranic harmony, pulling in what is needed and exhaling what is not, it is finding its purity again. And this is what we most desire for all of you at this time, believing that it will actually reinstall that original technology that you were seated in before. Now, we also recognize there is a sonic to this. Sonic and harmonic, we define very differently. We look at harmonic as the ability to come into resonance with, and sonic being more individual, because there is an individualized part of you that is so special and close to God. And we see yogic practice as having the focus on becoming as close to God as possible. And those that practiced it for many years, hundreds of years, were able to, as a container, bring that God consciousness to Earth. This is why enlightened masters and yogis who are in the presence of others could actually heal and change them instantaneously, because the yogic practice was bringing their godlike self back into embodiment and sharing it through their auric field as a sonic, as a unique signal. Now, this is present within your DNA. Many of you carry this yogic signature of masters who have been present on the planet and shared this vibration with others, and very easily tune in and tap into it yourselves. We also see an alternative process of nourishment that goes beyond physical that is very significant and a benefit of yogic practice through time. Ancient yogis could go without food or water for a long period of time because the nourishment they were receiving from the breath was all that was required. It turns the body into a powerhouse of life force energy that needs nothing from the physical material realm. It only sustains itself based on the breath. We see that many of you come back to teach this to humanity as well. Now, we want to leave you with a final thought. You are on a different timeline than many of these ancient yogis, yet the Akashic remembrance of them and their practices are coming back readily. It is not because you are meant to practice it deliberately or even sit in a cave for hundreds of linear years activating yourself in this way. These masters offered these assignments so that you could understand the value and the simplicity and significance of these practices. They left behind a template or a guidepost so that they could be recognized as holding the potential to heal. And many of you will do the same, yet in different ways.
I'd like to add on to that question and ask, how are the yogic practices different from tantric practices?
And we are the Lemurians, and they are somewhat one and the same, because the yogic and tantric practices have evolved from the same teaching. They have been utilized in different civilizations and taken on different subtleties and named different things. And it is very similar to the different strains of yogic practice that are being shared and taught today. Many of these have their roots in different multi-galactic lineages, and they have come back again through master teachers and conduits who have a tie to these lineages. The Tantric breath is more of an active type of breath that we see directly focused on life force. And this is why Tantra has been focused in more of an intimate and sexual way on your human planet, because life force is the basis for all creation. And we see it having a similar ability to what we have spoken of, rebirthing the physical body over and over again in the same container. The Tantric breath actually stems from an ancient practice through and by which collective energies were modified through individualized focus. Some of you look at Tantric practice as an aspect of coupling. And in our civilization, we had much similar focus to you, as the couple was a sacred union that was not just for the self and the other. We believed that couples came together because there was some life force signature that matched. And in that life force signature, each was complementing the other to create something within that civilization. So the Tantra was practiced knowing that the entire collective would benefit if that couple, as a consciousness itself, could cultivate and co-create a currency. That currency starting in non-physical and eventually benefiting whatever was meant to be shared physically. We see this same benefit for many of you today who are practicing Tantra as a couple, or even coming together in collectives to utilize Tantric breath. This can actually simulate and activate the vagal tones that we've spoken of in the yogic practice that have a direct tie to extrasensory gifts and abilities. Because in the Tantra, the sensory becomes very heightened, and that heightened sensory on your planet is an advantageous type of experience. Many of you we've seen have blocked your ability to feel. This goes in many directions. It comes from blocking emotions and traumas, and especially not wanting to be vulnerable and take the path of betrayal or pain. But what Tantra has the ability to do is automatically heal those areas that have been suppressed for so long, that are holding humans back in general from being vulnerable with each other and feeling into the sensory of their own bodies and extrasensory abilities.
Somewhat related to what you just asked or just talked about, and then another that isn't. The first is speaking on the concept of a couple and sacred union with the incoming gaining in popularity concept of polyamory. As a monogamous myself, how does that, it's confusing for me to understand what the spiritual role of multiple unions would be, and if that is as meaningful of a union when there's multiple.
Yes. We're the Pleiadians, and we want to speak to this very similarly to much of what was shared at the beginning of this transmission. We see multiple areas of human relationship being explored, and especially coming to a crossroads whereby so much resistance in certain areas is causing a fluctuation of beliefs, and especially exploration in terms of sexuality and even gender roles. We think this is a necessary time, not that it's a negative or a positive, but we see the ability to tap into these different dimensional realms and experiences as valuable because they will help direct humanity back to the original sacred union that we think is best for a physically focused being. The concept of polyamory actually comes from multi-galactic experience because in Pleiades, for example, although we do have families and couples and are very quote-unquote monogamous according to a human definition, we freely love all. There is a love-based frequency that exists in our star system that goes beyond the responsibility of just a partner or children, where many of you have taken on the microcosmic responsibility of only those who are blood relatives. We have begun to live in a more enlightened civilization where families and communities are massive in scope and number. So there's no need to step outside of the range of having intimacy with one partner for the duration of an entire incarnation, because we're receiving so much love from all directions in all ways that we find it quite nourishing and supportive of what we need. As a matter of fact, we'll take this a step further, as we are some of the original seeders of humanity. We look at your structure as operating very similarly to ours, meaning that you are more adept at choosing singular partners for long periods of time, especially in the range of twin flame type analogies. And we'll speak to that momentarily, because partners are not here to provide love so much as they are to enhance the love that you are already within. And this is how we've ended up in the situation that we find ourselves today, is that we have come to such a point in our individual ascension that we realize unless we are that love and operate in it in every circumstance, it cannot be present for us in a single partner or within our entire star system. Now, what we see happening within the movement from a third to a fifth dimensional vibration is this. Communities are beginning to form in the etheric realm. This is the beginning of new and enlightened societies, very similar to ourselves and the Lemurians. Polyamorous couples have historically through time found discord in karmic experience. So we look at polyamorous beings as actually being more focused in earthly experience, because this is the value of being a physical human. In order to ascend yourself, it is the amount of experience you have that catalyzes that growth. So if a human is choosing to be polyamorous, we might say that they have so much earthly karmic experience to resolve that they're choosing multiple partners simultaneously in order to catapult themselves into some higher growth in order to resolve what they came to Earth with. Not because being polyamorous is necessarily always a negative experience. It is all in how the soul enters those arrangements. But we don't think that those arrangements are truly meant to be here on the planet for a long period of time. So the twin flame concept is something that is alluded to and widely spoken of on your planet. And those of us who are here look at a twin flame as a cosmic soul that you have been with in multiple incarnations that can only come at the resonance of love. That resonance of love is not something that the partner brings to you. It is an eternal magnet that grows within your soul and brings that partner to Earth. Now, these partners are here to focus collectively. So we see relationship truly being focused on the collective, meaning twin flames or partners are coming together in a love-based frequency to co-create, in a sense of service, something for an enlightened community. And that is what we believe you were designed for. It's the way that we believe humans best operate. So our best advice to you in the interim, while things are playing out, is to allow every human to be where they are in terms of their preference and choice, especially when it comes to multiple partnerships. And to know that this is something that is an energetic twist or occurrence of what's taking place vibrationally in your earthly transition.
That was actually way more informative than I could have expected. The second question actually kind of touched on again. So Ram Dass speaks on becoming love in every aspect, and that everything is a manifestation of the one, and that it's love all the way. And in order to be an expression of love on a full form, you have to love everything, including like he said, that you can't have half of a polarity. In order to have the good, you have to, love all the bad. How do we come to a place of accepting and having a loving awareness for all of the negativity and even the interpersonal negativity that we experience as well?
Yes, we're the Pleiadians, and we're so pleased that you've brought this to our attention, because we do think it's a very valuable issue to discuss in light of what's happening on the planet. The polarity of dark and light has only become so great here because the lack of healing within has become so disturbed. What you see playing out in terms of violence against humanity, for example, is an unhealed wound of a young child. And this is how we perceive what's taking place. Darkness in its organic state, in terms of the spiral of light and dark, is truly meant to be preference and choice. That darkness is always perpetuating some inequilibrium that wants to come to balance. When we have something show up in our lives that isn't preferred, we are meant to find the next area of preference. And as we do, we are experiencing more and more love. So love isn't absent in judgment, but judgment blocks the ability of love to flow. Because we see all of you as being seated in love and as love. Love is not something that can be looked at in terms of an achievement, because it is already the pure essence of what you are. So it's the blocks and the siphons to that love being shared that must be focused upon in order to transition humanity forward. And this is why judgment is something that was brought forward in the earlier message, whereby judgment is seen as one of the biggest prohibiting factors to that organic state of love that you are forcing change on the planet. And it matters not whether the judgment is internal or external, because either way, it is restricting that energy. It is difficult, we know, when you look out at a planet where there is so much pain and destruction, where there is deliberate harming of humans in wartime. But we look at those humans who are causing that also as a reflection of what you have yet to heal within yourself. We say this with the utmost love and respect, that the only reason these things can perpetuate and exist is the fact that we don't take care of what lies within us, that we believe is not good enough, that we believe is showing ourselves the path of restriction. But at the same time, we acknowledge the generational patterns that you're working with are some of the greatest in history that we've ever seen a race have to deal with. The chain of events that follows humanity's generational patterns is really what's causing all of the disturbance on the planet today. So we want to take you back to the message that we brought through about the DNA and the Oversoul and how these generational patterns work. When we see ourselves interacting in something that seems to be dark, it is all in how we perceive it that alchemizes it. So if we look at someone as a criminal or we look at someone as having been traumatized as a child, these are two different vibrations. It seemingly may not make a difference to you in how the action is carried out, but we believe it makes a very tremendous impact non-physically on what you are holding space for in the future. And that holding space is one of the most important aspects of the new Earth rising. How we hold space is when we are able to put ourselves in the shoes of another and empathically understand and feel what they must be going through in order to have inflicted pain on someone this deep. This brings our own alchemy of truth to the surface and clears it readily and steadily to allow us to walk forward in the most pure and divine form. So the darkness in itself is in a state of alchemy. And for you to hold space for others at the same time that you hold space for yourself is the only path through which it can change.
How do the glands of our physical body connect with our energetic system as an universal technology, and how can we use them to enhance our spiritual gifts and anchor higher frequencies on Earth?
We are the Arcturians, and we actually have a touch into the Mantis. I welcome them. Glands are a molecular structure that calls forward energy from different centers of the body and is designed to transmute it. When we take one gland assignment in particular, such as a sweat gland, we can see the parallel to this, whereby there is something in the body that needs to be detoxified or rid of in order to find stability again. There are multiple structures within your body that have similar assignments to this, whereby there is an activity of harmony or balance, and the glands are one. But we do notice that there is a multidimensional assignment that they come with as well. Remember, your original seeding came at the hands of multiple hybrids that grounded here from different intergalactic locations. So parts of your body have actually come from and been mirrored by many of us who have evolved as well. When we look at the glands within a human body, we see that they are meant to cooperate and work together as a one field of light, meaning they are somewhat of a collective organism in nature. Through time, they have become very separate, and they have taken on separate identities and assignments. And that in itself is something we see as so detrimental, because this is how you've functioned in the third dimension and beyond. But what we believe is the more that you harmonize yourselves through the breath or through pure forms of food and water, these glandular systems begin to crystallize and activate together. And this is truly where their more multidimensional assignment or ability comes into play. We see that what they can do is they can share information with each other to actually support healing of disease, or especially where the body has taken on a consciousness that isn't in its highest and best interest. This can even go as far as to say there can be some lower dimensional being or attachment that has formed in your energy field that this glandular system can automatically clear and transmute. We look at the Merkaba in the human vibrational field as being intricately tied to this technology. The Merkaba has been looked at as a time travel technology, and it most certainly is on humans. But what the molecular structure of the glandular system, when functioning as one, has the benefit of doing is signaling the Merkaba to retrieve beneficial energies and information that strengthen the body. This provides a more stable platform for gifts and abilities to show themselves in your physical field as well. What the Mantis want to share is your energy field and physical body was based upon microbes and organisms that were also seeded here from intergalactics. So there is meant to be a diverse collective of different microbiotics and cellular organisms functioning together as one very similarly to your Earth and humanity as a collective functioning together as one. This is one of the most beneficial areas to focus on when you are trying to reorganize, activate, and heighten that glandular system. The more that you bring diversity into the body and pure states of physical nourishment, the more you're heightening the potential of that glandular system to activate itself fully and come back into its original design.
So are the guides saying that we should just accept what's happening in the world?
We're the Pleiadians, and acceptance is not the same as allowing yourself to be present within what is taking place. There is a level of acceptance that we believe some of you have to understand. It has little to do with allowing what's happening to be there, especially in terms of pain or trauma, wounds inflicted upon humanity. This could never be something that we believe should be accepted. What we're guiding you towards is knowing that within you, there is an intelligent structure that is responding and sending signals to the earth and all things upon the planet. So if you are to take a softer and more loving approach, when you look out upon the planet, not necessarily allowing what is taking place to be there, but seeing the relevance of its past creation that enables the energy to be held, as we have spoken of earlier. We know that it is a difficult time, and there are many dark and challenging situations that are being revealed. But remember, when things begin to come to light, when things are seen that were unseen previously, this can only be a result of raising consciousness. And we look at consciousness as the key to actually providing the ample breeding grounds for the new earth that you desire. It means not that you do not act, so much as we leave perception and consciousness with you as tools to actually train your vibration into the direction that you desire for yourself and all others. And we'll take this one area that has been brought to light previously here in this group and in this session and address it very detailed. We look at the traumas that are being inflicted upon children as some of the darkest and most reptilian energies that are still present on the planet. Now, when we start in a collective focus, we must understand that the only reason this could be happening on a mass scale is if energy was present in a pattern for such a long time that it gained steam and began to manifest on the planet deliberately. This does not mean to say that you are a contributor to it directly. But reptilian consciousness is something that is present within every human. It has hybridized with you. It is present within your own DNA. When you are speaking to yourself of ill intent, when you are focusing on others in a sense of judgment, these are equal vibrations and send a wave pattern into the universe to reinforce things that are playing out that you no longer desire. And this is why we always go to the ease of subtle adjustments, the inner voice, the outer perceptions, because this is where reptilian consciousness remains. So if that structure stays present on the planet and it's constantly reinforced as energy is being siphoned by it through you and directed by you through ill intent, it is no different than what's being played out at the hands of the physical humans who are causing these traumas. So it has to be worked in multiple lights. It is not our intention to say that anything should be ignored and there should be a focus only on positive. but to look at the things that are most difficult on the planet as having their roots in something that you should have compassion for. Because unless that compassion can be found, it cannot be shared and be the proponent of how this situation begins to change.
I have another question. So for abuse that happens in a way that we are not able to remember it at a later point in life, how do you process that kind of trauma without the capacity to remember exactly what occurred?
Yes, we are the Hathors. It's our pleasure to step forward. What we recognize is there are so many traumas in childhood years that often they become a sonic or a sound within. Many of you are familiar with perhaps the feeling of unworthiness. And in spiritual circles, it is important for you to work at the instance of unworthiness so that you may manifest the life of your dreams. But in order to work at unworthiness, it is important to uncover why the unworthiness is present. And we see unworthiness as a sound, a vibration that's being mimicked by you through time. Many of the childhood traumas and wounds that have been inflicted upon humanity are so painful and come at the hands of adult patterns and generations that there's been a propensity to restrict and suppress. But it is often the patterns that are used to suppress that can be the cornerstone to uncovering them. We want to give you some examples of these patterns as we see them playing out in different humans. One, for example, being repetitive thinking or repetitive thoughts. When a human is having an inability to stop their thinking process, it is usually a pattern that they were putting into place at an earlier age in order to suppress unconsciously what that sound or pattern was sharing that was so hard to be heard. If there can be an opportunity either in non-physical practice or in spiritual focus to change the pattern of thinking, there is also a gateway to acknowledge what those uncovered emotions and thoughts might be. In addition to this, we see addiction as being another chronic pattern running parallel to chronic thinking that has been put into place through time to suppress the ability to feel and uncover what lies in the subconscious. Now, addiction is a very interesting pattern because it is a very difficult one oftentimes for humans to break. But we suggest sometimes navigating into a new pattern to open the space or the door to focus on something new. And this is where the floodgates also open to what is running beneath the pattern. There are so many incredible technologies and processes on your planet to utilize to break apart what lies within that harmonic. And there are often multiple situations. Young children, even in the womb before they are born, are picking up on the discord and the difficulties in outer environments. And this can be the core of how all that builds around it begins to coincide. It is not necessary to break apart every single experience that's caused this sound to be. But there are often key experiences and ages that, when revealed, can actually change the entire chemistry of the body and especially let go of patterns or areas of distortion. We know that many of you are familiar with sound healing as a tool, and we come to explain that because it is something that we have used in our civilization and continue to work with on the planet in terms of human conduits. The reason we like sound so much is when a sound is introduced that is different than the one that resides in the body, it begins to change the consciousness, whereby the subconscious lets go and begins to operate differently. It isn't in a holding pattern of suppression, and things begin to flow free. This type of healing can be done in spoken word. It can be done in chants, or it can be utilized in ancient tools of sound. We even see processes such as hypnosis being based in some of those that we've created in our civilization, because there is a tone or a sound that is training the subconscious to let go of where it has held itself restrictive of what lies beneath. There could never be one process for any one individual, because you are so unique. But we recommend that you choose the ones that resonate most. And if those are not the path of healing, you are willing to try a new one. In the process of choosing and recalibrating to something new, you're also creating space and interruption that allows energy to flow differently.
I see a lot of different perspectives on the external versus the internal use of life force or sexual energy. The benefits apparently of inner utilization are like physical, cognitive, and creative. Can you speak to any meaning, significance, or truth behind this, and if there's a better way versus the other?
Yes, we are the Lemurians, and we cannot identify one way that's better than another, especially at a time on the planet when you are transitioning so quickly. However, we do want to define the practice that we believe you are speaking of, and it is of absorbing your own hormonal fluids. The hormones within your body are an etheric elixir. They are one of the most valuable currencies that you possess. Reason being, the hormonal structure is a harmonic calibrator. It is not only present to assist your physical body and the longevity of your physical nature, but also, yes, to support the flow of energy between the different neurons and connections and firings of the brain. We actually look at that central channel, as we've spoken of, where the vagal nerve runs, as being a connection between the brain, the heart, and the gut. And these are the areas that are meant to work in concert in order for you to live at your highest potential. Anytime that you are practicing a tantric process and you are choosing to keep that process internal or etheric, it is a better analogy for your body to do this at periods of time, because as a male component of the female, you're absorbing your life force and able to use it more deliberately and physical. The channel of life force energy does not just exist in physical alone, especially in order to create a child or to experience a blissful or orgasmic state. When you are in meditation and activating the Kundalini, what you are doing is you're utilizing this central channel to raise energy and interact with this elixir that we've spoken of, which is hormonal. This is why activating Kundalini is such a nourishing and significant practice for those who are trying to physically heal and also retain more energy. Because the natural state of your body relies upon nourishing and replenishing itself first before it goes into the outer world. But in physical intercourse, and especially utilizing a tantric process, we see that this is also a necessary part of your human experience, because you have decided to incarnate as physical beings. The sensory process of connecting in physical is truly a significant activator of your hormonal substances or elixirs, as well as the internal and etheric cords that we've spoken of. When the body reaches a state of orgasm, it's remembering its highest state of God. It's remembering oneness. And this is why this activity is so sacred and expected to be practiced on your planet throughout history. But it is no different if you are practicing a Kundalini type activation on your own or in a tantric practice, keeping the hormonal fluids within. As a matter of fact, we think it has slightly different benefits, but just as potent and powerful. We must acknowledge that as the masculine is designed differently than the feminine, there are times in which the age of the masculine requires more of that etheric recycling than it does physical. And this is something that we recommend. It is something that comes from our civilization, and we have taught it because we have seen the actual differences that can be made in how potent our life force and manifestation skills are when we reprocess and absorb our own hormonal fluids. We note that you are changing very quickly, and much of what we teach has even yet to come to light. So more of this will be offered as you continue to ascend and are, we'll say, matching that relevant information from the Akash.
Could you conclude the session, please?
Yes, we are the Pleiadians. All of us who are here and we speak as a one voice are always so pleased and honored to be with you. It is not only what we've offered in the concepts and words that are most significant, but the love we've shared together as one light. And we are so very pleased and honored to continue the journey with you as we are called upon at any time. Many blessings. All right. Thank you all. For being here, co-creating this with me. Can't do it without you.